The diamond ring caught the afternoon, light as Marcus Wellington, raised his hand to check his watch. It was an unusual piece, not ostentatious despite its obvious value, but distinctive in its vintage design. The elderly billionaire had worn it every day for 43 years, a constant reminder of promises made and a life built from nothing. Sarah. Mitchell's hands trembled slightly as she refilled the water glass at table 7. It wasn't nervousness about serving one of the wealthiest men in America. She'd waited tables at Romano's for 6 years and had served her share of important people. It was the ring, that impossible, heart-stopping ring on his right hand that made her breath catch in her throat. "Excuse me, sir," she heard herself say, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mother has a ring just like yours." Marcus Wellington looked up from his menu, his steel-gray eyes meeting hers with curiosity. He was 81 years old, and in all his decades of wearing this ring, no one had ever said those words to him. The ring had been custom-made in 1982, one of only 2 in existence. "I beg your pardon?" His voice was gentler than she expected. Sarah's cheeks flushed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. It's just, the design is so unique. The way the small emeralds circle the diamond in that specific pattern. My mom has one exactly like it. She's had it since before I was born." The billionaire's face had gone pale. He slowly removed the ring, holding it up to examine it as if seeing it for the first time. "What's your mother's name?" "Elena Rodriguez." "Well, it's Mitchell now. She remarried when I was 12. Marcus set down his menu, his hands now visibly shaking. "Is your mother's maiden name Vasquez?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Yes, how did you—" "Sit down, please." It wasn't a request from a customer to a waitress. It was a plea from one human being to another. Sarah glanced around nervously, but the lunch rush had ended, and her manager was in the back. She slid into the booth across from him. Marcus Wellington closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were glistening with unshed tears. 44 years ago, I was nobody. Just another kid from the Bronx trying to make it in the city. I was working as a janitor in a Manhattan office building, taking night classes, dreaming of something more. He paused, lost in memory. There was a cleaning woman who worked my shift, Elena. She was saving every penny to bring her mother and sister over from Mexico. We became friends, more than friends. She was the kindest person I'd ever met. She'd share her lunch with me even when I knew she could barely afford it herself. She believed in me when I had no reason to believe in myself. Sarah listened, her heart pounding. Her mother had never talked much about her life before Sarah was born, always changing the subject when asked about her time in New York. "I was developing a business plan," Marcus continued. "A software idea that I thought could revolutionize data management. I'd been working on it for 2 years, but I needed $5,000 to file patents and create a prototype. It might as well have been $5 million. He turned the ring over in his weathered hands. "Elena found out somehow. One night, she showed up to work and handed me an envelope. Inside was $5,000, every single cent she'd saved over 3 years to bring her family to America. She said, 'You're going to change the world, Marcus.' I know it. This is an investment in the future." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. She'd never known. Her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to raise her alone after Sarah's father left, who still cleaned houses at 64 years old despite Sarah's pleading, that woman had once given away everything she had. "I tried to refuse," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "but she wouldn't hear it. She made me promise 2 things, that I'd pay it forward someday, and that I'd never give up on my dreams. Before I could raise the money to pay her back, she disappeared. I searched for years. Hired investigators, nothing. It was like she'd vanished." "She moved to New Mexico," Sarah whispered. "She told me once that she left New York suddenly, that she had to get away. She never said why." Marcus nodded slowly. "I had these rings made the day my company went public. One for me, one for her. I've worn mine every day, hoping that somehow, someday—" He trailed off, unable to finish. "She has hers too," Sarah said softly. "She never takes it off. I asked her about it once when I was little. She just smiled and said it reminded her that miracles are real." The tears Marcus had been holding back finally fell. "I need to see her." Is she well?" Sarah hesitated. This was the part she didn't want to say. "She's sick, cancer, stage 4. She's been fighting for 18 months, but her own tears came now. The treatments aren't covered by her insurance. I've been working double shifts, but it's not enough. We're out of options. The doctors say without the new immunotherapy trial, she has maybe 3 months? Marcus Wellington stood up abruptly. Take me to her. Right now. Sir, I can't just leave work. How much do you make in a month here? I don't see how that's... How much? Maybe $2,000 with tips. Marcus pulled out his phone, made a call. Robert, I need $100,000 in cashier's checks within the hour. And get Dr. Chen at Sloan Kettering on the line. Tell her it's urgent. He looked at Sarah. Now take off that apron. I'm not going to wait another 44 years. The drive to Sarah's small apartment felt both endless and too short. Marcus said little, staring out the window at the passing streets. Perhaps seeing ghosts of a younger self walking them decades ago. Elena was sitting in her worn armchair by the window when they arrived. A blanket across her lap despite the warm afternoon. She'd lost weight, her frame fragile, but her eyes were still bright. Those eyes that had seen something special in a janitor with dreams. She looked up as they entered, and her gaze went immediately to the man standing in her doorway. The color drained from her face. Marcus? Hello, Elena, his voice broke. I've been looking for you. She stood slowly, her hand instinctively touching the ring on her right hand, a perfect match to his. You found me. No, he said, crossing the room to her. Your daughter found me. She has your gift for seeing what others miss. What happened in the next moment, Sarah would remember for the rest of her life. Two people who'd once been young and full of dreams, who'd been separated by time and circumstance, who'd each carried a ring as a symbol of hope. They simply held each other and wept. You changed the world, Elena whispered. I always knew you would. You saved my life, Marcus replied. And now I'm going to save yours. In the weeks that followed, Elena was admitted to the country's best cancer center. The experimental treatment Marcus funded began immediately. But more than that, he was there, visiting daily, bringing flowers, sharing meals, telling stories that made her laugh until she couldn't breathe. Sarah watched her mother transform. Not just physically, though the treatments were working beyond anyone's hopes, but something else. A lightness returned to her. A joy that Sarah realized had been missing her entire life. Why did you leave him? Sarah asked her mother one afternoon as they sat in the hospital garden. Elena smiled, touching her ring. I loved him too much to hold him back. I was undocumented, facing possible deportation. He had this brilliant future ahead of him. I couldn't let him sacrifice everything for me. So I left, and I prayed that ring would somehow lead us back to each other if we were meant to be. 6 months later, on a spring morning filled with sunshine, Marcus Wellington made an announcement that shocked the business world. He was donating $5 billion to create a foundation providing health care and education to working immigrants, the Elena Vasquez Foundation. At the press conference, he held Elena's hand, both their rings catching the camera flashes. 44 years ago, a woman gave me everything she had because she believed in me, Marcus told the crowd. She taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to invest in each other's humanity. This foundation is my promise kept, not just to her, but to everyone who's ever been told they don't matter. You do. We all do. Sarah stood in the back of the room, wearing her own ring now, a third one Marcus had made, completing the circle. Her mother was in remission. The medical bills were paid. But more importantly, her mother was happy in a way Sarah had never seen before. That evening, as the celebration wound down, Sarah found Marcus standing alone on a balcony, looking out at the city lights. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. He turned to her with a smile. I should be thanking you. That day you spoke up about the ring. You gave me back something. I thought I'd lost forever. You know what the real miracle is? It wasn't the money, or the company, or any of this. He gestured at the glittering skyline. It was a waitress who had the courage to notice something unusual and say something. Most people would have stayed quiet. Mom taught me to pay attention to the details, Sarah said. To see people, really see them. She taught me the same thing. All those years ago. Marcus placed a fatherly hand on her shoulder. Your mother's gift to me wasn't the money. It was the belief that one person's faith in another can change everything. and now you've given us both a second chance. As Sarah drove home that night, she thought about all the small moments that had led to this, her mother's kindness to a janitor decades ago, her own decision to speak up about a ring, the way love and hope could survive even when separated by time and circumstance. She thought about how close she'd come to saying nothing, to just refilling the water and moving on to the next table, how different everything would be if she'd stayed silent. But she hadn't, because her mother had taught her something more valuable than any ring, more precious than any fortune, that we're all connected in ways we can't see, and that sometimes the smallest act of acknowledgement, of truly seeing another person, can unlock miracles we didn't know were waiting. 3 months later, Elena and Marcus were married in a small ceremony. Sarah stood as her mother's maid of honor, and as she watched them exchange vows, she understood something profound. This wasn't just a story about money or cancer or even lost love found again. It was a story about the incredible power of one person believing in another, of kindness given freely without expectation of return, of hope carried forward through the years on a simple band of gold and stone, and of a daughter who learned that speaking up, even when your voice shakes, even when you're just a waitress talking to a billionaire, can change absolutely everything. The 3 rings, his, hers, and now Sarah's, would be worn every day forward. A reminder that the most valuable investments we ever make aren't financial. They're human, and their returns, when they come, are beyond anything we could ever calculate.